Hi and welcome to another tutorial of Linealizer version 2.1. Today we'll show you how to structure your data by making use of the functions Transpose and Unpivot in Linealizer. Here is our agenda. We'll quickly have a look on how to ideally structure the tables and their content, and then we'll go through two examples, one on transpose and one on unpivoting. So, Linealizer has a built-in relational database capable of handling a large amount of tables simultaneously. To obtain maximum flexibility with your analysis work in the tool, it's necessary to structure the tables and their content in a good way. There is some good practice for this, which includes avoiding redundant categories or field names. It's very common to have tables with one column for each year or month, for instance. Sometimes there can be a column for each product or city, and so on. I'll show you an example. Here we have a table with average income in different municipalities for different years. One column for each year. It's clearly a redundant way of representing data, and therefore a better solution would be to transform these columns so that we can gather all 3 years in one column. The reason to do so is that it gets much easier to analyze the data if we have only one column per category. I'll show you another example. Here we have another table with different products. It represents different bikes with their weights and prices. As there are several columns for products, we have a redundant structure here. Let's modify this by transposing the columns and lines. We directly see it's much easier to compare the weights and prices with this new structure just by swapping axes for the data. Let's have a look at this in Linealizer. We can start by importing a file with the same table as seen in the previous example. Let's move over to load mode, as it's here that we can control the structure of the tables, at least if we want the modifications to be automized when importing additional data. We recognize the structure from the previous example with bikes, and let's apply the transpose command in the tool by ticking this box here. As expected, I get the data structured in a much better way, and moving over to prepare mode, I can start working with the data. Let me show you a more advanced example for unpivoting. For this, I create a new analytical database and import a data file from a Swedish electricity transmission company. It contains information about the electricity production on an hourly basis for 2018. Linealizer directly takes us to prepare mode, but we see here that we've got redundant field names, so let's go back to load mode and have a look. Let's try to fix the structure by unpivoting the data. By ticking the Unpivot checkbox, Linealizer tries to unpivot the data, but it still doesn't look very good. Let's go back to pivoted mode and select the fields that are redundant in the following way. Let's tick Unpivot again and see what we get. Now it looks much better. We've got date and time here, the categories, and the values. Linealizer has correctly interpreted that there are 5 header rows. If you want to go back to the pivoted mode, you can always toggle back and forth between the different modes like this. As it looks good to us, we can apply the table to the database. But as we have a lot of data in this file, it can take some time. Now it's time to move over to prepare mode. And here we see that we've got our fields. Let's just take away the unnecessary ones. We can rename the field value to megawatt hours, as this is actually what it is. Let's take away this one as well, as all the lines take the same value. This field here is actually area. And category 1 and 2 makes up one category together, so let's concatenate them. That can be done as follows by changing field type to text, and then merging the two fields as follows with a blank between. Now we can delete category 2 and call it just category. Let's call this field datetime. And now we can apply our modifications to the database. Now we got a structure of the table which enables us doing pivot analysis, for instance. Before doing so, let's just set the category field as a dimension and translate some of the major categories. This is done by modifying our dimensions. Here we can see that we have heat power, nuclear power, wind power, and water power. Creating a new pivot analysis, we get the category here on the y-axis, and adding date time aggregated by quarters, we get the following result. Let's add cell bars to this pivot analysis to make it easier to read. We can also filter on the categories that are of interest for us as follows. So today we've seen how to transpose and unpivot data in Leanalyzer. Thank you for listening.